Hey, I'm Aylin. I turned 33 this year. And on my birthday, I sat at a table meant for 6 completely alone. I wore heels I hated, poured wine for people who never showed up, and waited like it still meant something. At 6:47 p.m., I got a text from my mom. It said, "You're not our priority right now. Not happy birthday. Not sorry we can't make it." Just that. They didn't forget. That would have been easier, honestly. No. They chose to make other plans. With the money I gave them, they threw a party for my brother instead. How do you even begin to bounce back from that? Or maybe the better question is, why would you want to? I remember showing up early 15 minutes before the reservation. The sun was setting behind the Denver skyline, casting that soft golden glow on the sidewalk. It was a little chilly, and for once I was glad I went with the long-sleeve dress. It wasn't fancy or expensive, but it was picked with care, the kind of dress you wear when you want people to know you tried. The hostess smiled and said, "Party of 6? I nodded. "Yes, Aylin. I made the reservation last week." She walked me to this beautiful table by the front window. 6 chairs. Everything set perfectly. A candle flickered in the center like it had no idea I'd be sitting there alone. I took the end seat, facing the door, hoping still that someone would walk through it. The waiter came over and asked if I wanted to wait before ordering. "They're just running late," I said too quickly. He nodded like he already knew. I checked my phone again. Nothing. I tried to play it cool, checked work emails, scrolled aimlessly, pretended I had better things to do than care. I even thought maybe they'll still show. Zania's always late. Curtis is forgetful. And Mom, well, she rarely shows up early unless it's for someone else's special day. But then my phone lit up again. That text. "You're not our priority right now. Enjoy your dinner." 13 words that made everything crystal clear. This wasn't an accident. It was intentional. Chosen. And then, right when I thought it couldn't sting more, the waiter returned with a little wrapped box. "Someone dropped this off earlier," he said. "They said it's from your family." I gave him a tight smile, the kind you wear like a mask so people don't start asking questions you can't answer. The wrapping was neat. Classy. Matte gold. No bow, just like Zania always liked it. Inside was a silk scarf. Pale blue. And my heart dropped. I bought that exact scarf for my mom last Christmas. Same brand. Same stitching. Same tiny snag on the corner from her ring. I held it and it felt like holding proof. Underneath the tissue paper was a card. "Happy birthday from all of us." But just faintly underneath the new ink, I saw my own handwriting. "Love you always, Mom." They didn't even get a new card. Just wrote over the old one like you can rewrite memory the same way. I sat there, scarf in hand, breath unsteady, but my hands didn't shake. At the next table, a couple whispered sweet things in clinked glasses. Someone laughed from across the room. The world kept spinning. Nobody paused for the moment I realized I was no longer part of my own family's story. I lifted my wine glass and took a sip. No tears. No scene. Just this heavy, invisible weight settling into me like wet cement. And here's the thing, when you're left out enough times, it stops shocking you. I remembered birthdays where I was forgotten in speeches. Family photos where I was behind the camera, not in front of it. But this was different. This one was mine. And they chose to stay away. I stayed a little longer, watching streetlights flicker on like nothing happened. Then I reached into my purse and pulled out a sticky note. I'd meant to use it for a grocery list or something, but instead I wrote 5 words. I left $20 under my plate, more than enough for the wine, and stood up. No goodbye to the waiter. No checking my phone. Just left quietly. And on the table next to the untouched bread and that recycled gift sat my note. "Thank you. No more seats." By the time I walked through the door, the whole city felt like it had exhaled. Denver was still. The kind of quiet that only shows up after a long, noisy day. The sky outside my window was fading from deep blue to that empty kind of black. I kicked off my heels, dropped my bag on the counter, and tossed that little sticky note, the one I'd scribbled down at the restaurant beside the fruit bowl I never fill. The air still smelled like hairspray and maybe hope. I didn't bother flipping on any lights. The glow from the buildings outside was just enough to move through the apartment without bumping into anything except maybe my own disappointment. I poured myself a glass of water I had no intention of finishing and sat at the edge of the couch like I was still waiting for someone to show up, even though I already knew they wouldn't. Then my phone buzzed. I didn't rush to check it. For a second, I hoped it was just some boring notification, maybe a reminder or an ad. But something tugged at me and I looked. Instagram. A new post from Xenia. My thumb hovered. I knew better. I really did. But I tapped anyway. And there it was. Like a punch straight to the chest. Velma. Xenia. Curtis. Even Uncle Ray, who hasn't been invited to anything since that drama with Dad's will. All of them, lined up outside the Marina restaurant in Boulder. Glasses raised. Big glowing smiles. Right in the center, Curtis. Arms wide like he was the star of the show. In his hand, a keychain with a motorcycle logo. The caption read, "To the dreamer who made it happen." My stomach twisted. I zoomed in without even realizing it. Velma had on the same scarf they regifted me earlier that day. And on Curtis's wrist? A shiny expensive watch. I blinked. That was the watch. The one he sent me a picture of 2 months ago asking if it was too pricey. I told him not to get it. He said he couldn't afford it anyway. But there it was. I set the phone down and just stared at the dark screen. I saw my own reflection looking back at me like a stranger. Then I opened my banking app. Last Tuesday. $1,500. Transferred to Curtis. He told me it was for rent. Told me he was scared. Said they were threatening to evict him. He cried. He wasn't scared. He was shopping. I let the phone slide out of my hand and onto the couch. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just froze. Like I'd left my body and was watching it all from above. They didn't just forget to invite me. They used my money to throw that party. They toasted to each other with champagne I unknowingly paid for. I stood up and walked over to the table where my laptop still sat open. Earlier that morning, I had tried to make a reservation. 6 seats. For people who didn't even bother to text back. I opened a new document and named it Support, Unreciprocated. Line by line, I started typing what I could remember. Car loan help, $2,800. Mortgage bridge payments, $5,200. Dental bill for Xenia's kid, $600. Curtis's big celebration, $1,200. No thank yous. No invites. No apologies. I copied the photo from Xenia's post and pasted it beside the last line. Then I opened another tab and searched Selective Family Amnesia, just to see if anyone else had ever put this feeling into words. My phone buzzed again. Voicemail from Velma. I didn't play it. I just let it sit there on the screen while I stared out at the headlights crawling through the night. Somewhere someone was celebrating love. Holding their baby after a long week. Sitting around a table with people who actually chose them. And mine? Mine chose this. I whispered into the quiet. They made their choice. Let them live with it. The next morning felt weightless. Like the universe was tiptoeing around me. I didn't wake up to an alarm. It was just the soft light slipping through the blinds I forgot to close all the way. My place was spotless because I'd spent hours cleaning instead of feeling anything. It looked like I was expecting company. No one came. I didn't even check my phone. I just sat at the edge of my bed and stared at the suitcase in the corner. Still packed. I was supposed to go away that weekend. But I canceled. Velma needed help with the leaking pipe. Said she tried Curtis first, but you know how boys are. So I said, "It's okay, Mom. I'll come." It wasn't okay. I just didn't know how to say that out loud. At the kitchen table, I pulled up the spreadsheet again. I added a new tab. Emotional overdrafts. This one wasn't about money. This was about every moment I gave up something important to show up for someone else. Skip trip to New Mexico? Curtis's car broke down. Paid for Thanksgiving catering? No one reimbursed me. Not even a mention. Decorated Xenia's baby shower last minute? She thanked me on Facebook. That was it. Covered Velma's dental bill? She promised to pay me back. She didn't. No emotions. Just truth. That's the difference between being sad and being clear. Sadness has you curled up in bed. Clarity sits you up straight and starts making a list. My mind started drifting. I thought about Xenia's wedding. I was tucked way in the back, stuck between the catering intern and some guy's ex. When it was time for the toast, Xenia raised her glass and said, "To my amazing family," then forgot my name. She called me Aylin, stretching it out like I was some random +1. And then there was that Christmas Eve dinner. Velma asked me to just help in the kitchen real quick, while everyone else was out front, posing by the tree like a Hallmark card. I came back 20 minutes later with a tray of roasted veggies, only to hear Uncle Ray say, "Oh, you were here? I was always there. I just didn't count." Not really. Not in the way that mattered. And that difference. It was tiny, but it stung. Then my phone lit up. A message from Mara. "Hey, just a heads up, my aunt saw your mom yesterday. Velma told her you're being dramatic, making stuff up. Said you've always been a bit too much." I set the phone down gently. So that's the new version of the story, huh? Not just left out, but rewritten in real time. My silence wasn't just being dismissed anymore. It was being twisted into something convenient for them. I thought about all the holidays I showed up to out of guilt. The birthdays where I was the one behind the camera, never in the shot. The gifts I sent even when no one remembered mine. And then I thought about that photo I saw earlier, the one where they were celebrating Curtis, throwing a party with money I'd quietly given, not realizing I'd funded it. I started scrolling through my phone and found a picture from 2 Christmases ago. Everyone's smiling. Velma has a glass of wine, zinnias in red satin. Curtis already has gravy on his shirt. And me? I'm not in it. Of course I'm not. I took the picture. I stared at that photo for a long time, holding the phone like it might somehow pull me in if I looked hard enough. But it didn't. I whispered to the quiet room. I was never in the picture because I was always the one framing it. Monday showed up with a dull gray sky, and that kind of breeze that makes you feel like something's about to change even if no one says it. I made coffee mostly out of habit. The silence in my apartment didn't feel peaceful that morning. It felt like a challenge. After handling a couple boring work emails, I opened up the mortgage account that Velma and I had shared since Dad passed. I wasn't expecting anything crazy, I just wanted to make sure the last payment went through. But then I noticed something weird. There was a new document attached to the property profile. A revised ownership agreement. My name used to be on that deed. For the past 3 years it had been there. Now, gone. I clicked to download the file. There it was, updated just 4 weeks ago. Velma and Curtis were now listed as the only owners. No space for my name. No signature request. Just gone. Like I never existed in the first place. I picked up the phone and called the county clerk's office. After being bounced around with hold music and transfers, I finally got through to a woman with a calm but tired voice. I gave her the file number. She checked it. "Yes, ma'am. This was submitted in person. It's been processed and notarized." My voice was shaking, but I tried to stay calm. "Was there a signature for me on file?" She paused. For so long I thought maybe the call dropped. Then finally, "Yes, there's a signature. Alan M. Jennings. It looks neat, but there's no ID attached. No extra verification. Just the signature page." I swallowed hard. "I didn't sign that," I said. "That's not mine." She got quiet for a second, then replied, "Well, if you believe fraud was involved, I recommend reaching out to a property attorney." Fraud. I ended the call and just sat there for a second. My own mother possibly signing my name, removing me from something that once tied me to this family, and doing it with zero hesitation. I tried to breathe through the shock. Then I noticed a folder on my desktop. I opened it. Inside was a flyer from last year's senior community fundraiser, the one I paid for anonymously when the city slashed their budget. I remembered Velma standing on that stage in her pastel suit, pearls shining under the lights, giving a speech that made people cry. She accepted a plaque in the family's name. The next month's newsletter called her the heart of the Jennings family. My name wasn't mentioned. Not even once. Not even in tiny print. I dragged the revised deed into that folder and renamed it. Not forgotten, just ignored. Then I took screenshots the newsletter article, the photo of Velma smiling beside the mayor, and pasted them all into a new document. I titled it simply, Pattern. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I didn't argue or try to explain. Instead, I found a real estate attorney through a coworker's referral. I drafted an email short and to the point. Attached everything. Explained the timeline. Hit send before I could talk myself out of it. And honestly, it felt clean. Like pulling out a splinter you didn't even know was infected until the relief hit. I was flipping through that old PDF again when my eyes stopped on the last line. All heirs in agreement verified. Just like that. No hesitation. No second look. They didn't even ask. They just assumed. I murmured to the screen, my voice barely above a breath. I wasn't overlooked. I was erased. Outside, the light was fading soft, silvery blue curling into dusk. Shadows from the trees stretched across the floor like they were unsure where to land. I was still in my work clothes, frozen in place. My shoes sat by the door untouched. A microwave dinner sat half-eaten on the table, growing cold. And me? I was on the couch, unmoving, staring blankly at the silent TV like it owed me an explanation. I'd gotten used to the quiet in my apartment. But that night, it felt different, like it was pretending to be peaceful. Like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to break the stillness. Then came a knock. Not loud but firm. Not hesitant. It was the kind of knock that doesn't ask permission, it announces itself. I opened the door, already bracing myself. And there she was. Velma. Holding one of those pastel gift bags you grab last minute at the drugstore. The tissue paper puffed up like whipped cream. Her smile was tight, like it had been stapled in place. I thought we could talk, she said. Like adults. I didn't say a word. Didn't step aside. But of course she walked right in. That's Velma for you, always deciding the rules. Always assuming they don't apply to her. She sat right on the edge of the couch, like touching it too much might stain her. I stayed standing. There was no way I was going to shrink myself just to make her feel better. I know how it might have looked, she started, rubbing her palms down her jeans. But we figured. Maybe you needed space after what happened at dinner. I blinked. Just once. What happened at dinner, I said, slow and steady, was that none of you showed up. She didn't even flinch. Just kept going. I think things got misunderstood. And well, you're not always the easiest person to. To what? I asked. My voice cut through the room like a blade. She let out a breath through her nose, sharp and annoyed. The fake nice mask slipped. You're just so sensitive. You take everything personally, like the whole world's out to get you. Ah, there it was. The family classic. I'd heard it 100 times. You're the problem. You're too much. Too dramatic. Can't take a joke. Why can't you just let things go? But I wasn't angry. Not anymore. Not in the way they wanted me to be. I looked her right in the eye and said calmly, no, I just stopped lying for you. Something in her face twitched. Not a smile. Not a frown, just that moment when someone realizes they've been seen too clearly. She folded her arms and leaned back like she was getting comfortable in her disappointment. I didn't come here to apologize, she said. I just didn't want people thinking we abandoned you. Of course, it was never about the truth. It was about how things looked. She placed the gift bag on the table like it was a peace offering, but her expression was stiff, like even that took effort. I picked it up, walked into the kitchen and gently dropped it into the trash. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. Out of closure. When I turned back, she was still there, frozen, watching. I opened a drawer, pulled out a folder I'd prepped days ago. I wasn't hoping. I was ready. I handed her a single sheet from inside. Neat, organized, factual. A breakdown of every single financial contribution I'd made to the family over the past 5 years: rent, groceries, emergencies, all of it. Receipts. Dates. Amounts. She scanned it briefly. Her face stayed still, but her grip tightened on the paper. This, I said, is the person you've been whispering about. The one you say is too much. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, but nothing came out. I wasn't finished. Next time someone asks where I went, tell them the truth. Tell them I stopped paying to be invisible. Her shoulders sagged just a bit, like the mask had finally gotten too heavy to wear. She stood slowly, pulled her coat around her like it was some kind of armor, made her way to the door. Right before she stepped out, she paused, hand on the knob, and muttered without looking back, "You'll regret this when you're alone." I followed behind her, calm as ever, and quietly shut the door after her. Then turned the lock. Click. I leaned my forehead against the door frame and just breathed. Not because I was sad. Not because I'd won anything. Just because I could finally let go. I've already been alone, I whispered into the quiet. This time I chose it. And in that silence I didn't feel empty. I felt free. Friday evening rolled in like a sigh. No big moment. Just this soft, almost sacred kind of quiet. The kind that makes you realize how noisy your life's been, how heavy it all felt. The air outside had shifted, sharp and dry, with that first little bite of winter tucked in. I hadn't bothered closing the balcony door after the sun disappeared behind the buildings. Letting the cold sneak in felt like my own quiet protest. Stung, yeah, but in a way that felt honest. Cleaner than the fake concern and half-hearted apologies I'd been dodging lately. I sat cross-legged on the edge of the couch, barefoot, a blanket wrapped around my shoulders like armor. A glass of wine sat untouched beside me, catching a glint of lamplight. I wasn't drinking tonight not to prove anything, but because I wanted to feel everything. Clearly. Fully. Without the blur. My mind drifted to Velma's visit, but this time I didn't flinch. I didn't hear her voice with that tone that always made her sound like she was trying out for some woe is me award. I just heard her words flat, distant, and no longer sharp. You'll regret this once you're alone. I let those words float there for a second, like dust hanging in a still room. But the thing is, alone wasn't new. Alone wasn't a punishment. It was where I'd always done my best healing. Where I'd pieced myself back together after being torn apart by their expectations, their demands, their never-ending need to take without asking. I stood up slowly, walked to the balcony, and gently closed the door. The latch clicked shut with a soft finality, like a door that doesn't need to open again. I turned to head back to the couch, and that's when my phone lit up. The family group chat, still going strong. I hadn't opened it in weeks, and yet here it was again, lighting up like a bad dream that won't stay buried. Emergency call tonight. 8 p.m. sharp. No drama this time. Let's keep it civil. Then from Zania. Don't invite her this year. She ruins the mood. They renamed the chat to Family First. Cute. They didn't remove me because that would have taken guts. They just kept talking like I wasn't there. Like I never had been. I stared at it for a beat, thumb hovering. Then I hit mute. Then delete. Not out of anger. Not to make a point. Just peace. I opened my email, needing to shift my focus. Anything but this. And there it was, an email from the real estate attorney I'd contacted earlier. Subject. Final title adjustment confirmed. Clicked it. Heart steady. Breathing calm. The message was short, to the point. All title removals have been processed. Your name no longer appears on the joint property. Effective immediately. No fluff. No explanation. No sorry. Just facts. And that's all I needed. I let out a slow breath, not happy, not heartbroken, just released. This wasn't a win. It was a clean break. A quiet exit from something I'd spent way too long calling family. I got to work cutting every last thread. I canceled the grocery deliveries Velma had linked to my account, still sending fancy snacks to her house like I owed her something. I turned off autopay for the streaming services, the cloud storage, the shared logins. One by one, I let go of everything they'd kept tied to me. And then I wrote a message. It wasn't a goodbye. It was a closure. Handled what I needed. No further replies necessary. And I sent it into the silence of that muted thread. So I made a new folder on my desktop. I called it Closure Is Mine. Inside I dropped in everything. The scan title deed. The receipts. Screenshots of that thread where Zania told me maybe I should skip Christmas. For everyone's sake. The email where Velma swore she never touched my emergency fund, then sent the exact amount to herself on Venmo that same night. I didn't plan to ever open that folder again. But I needed it to exist. Not for them. For me. Because when people try to twist your story, you better be ready to hold up the real one word for word. As I walked past the hallway mirror on my way to bed, something made me stop. I hadn't really looked at myself in days. So I stepped back and stared. Same eyes. Same face. But my posture? It had changed. I didn't look like someone begging to be let back in. I didn't look like someone trying to be chosen. I looked like someone who had finally stood still long enough to let the storm pass and realize she was still standing. You broke me once, I whispered to the mirror. But this time my voice didn't shake. This time I'm the one walking away. I turned off the lights. The room went dark. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of the dark. I felt free. Saturday morning showed up gentle, like it didn't want to wake me too fast. The sun slowly crept across the floor, slipping in through the blinds like it was asking, "Hey, do I still belong here?" And for once, I didn't reach for my phone. I made coffee instead, 2 scoops of that bold roast I hide from guests. I watered the plants by the window, chatting to them like they were old friends. I even picked up that book I'd been meaning to finish, a collection of essays on stillness. I'd barely opened it before, and for a few quiet moments, I believed I could actually build a life that felt like mine. Not one built from guilt or duty or pretending to fit in. Just mine. But then my phone lit up. 1 missed call. Then 3. Then 7. The family group chat had rebranded again. It used to be Emergency Mortgage Crisis, then Unity Over Blood. Now, Family Unity SOS. I didn't even have to open it to know what was happening. They were spiraling. Again. Message after message came in. "Let's talk tonight, no judgment. Time to regroup. We can fix this. We just need to come together." And then the one that made my fingers freeze mid-scroll. From Zania. "Let's be real. Don't invite her this year. She ruins the mood." I just stared at it. Her profile picture was still that filtered Thanksgiving photo taken at the house I helped pay for. The one where I'd been cropped out. You could just see the edge of my arm holding a tray of pies. Forgotten. I didn't reply. I didn't even finish reading the thread. I just took a breath, took screenshots, and moved them into another folder, one my attorney told me to make. Defamation log 01. It was filling up faster than I expected. But instead of spiraling, I reached for something else. An old book from the bottom shelf, one my dad gave me years ago. Not about money, or power, or fixing people. It was about stillness. Something I didn't even know I'd been missing. Halfway through, I found a bent page with a folded note tucked inside. Worn and creased, his handwriting unmistakable. "You are the one who gives without asking. Don't let them take that from you. Giving isn't weakness, baby girl, it's strength. But strength must be honored, or it turns into burden. And burden breaks." I sat there holding that note, letting those words crack something open inside me. It wasn't sadness that made my eyes sting. It was that feeling of finally being seen, even in silence. I got up and walked toward the photo wall. So many memories, but none of them mine. Zania's engagement party I paid for catering, cleaned up alone at midnight. Gone. Curtis holding his newborn I paid the hospital deposit when insurance didn't. Gone. The Sedona trip Velma still takes credit for. I had the receipts. Gone. One by one I took the photos down. They clinked against each other as I dropped them into a trash bag. All except one. The picture of Dad and me, laughing on the front porch, caught in golden summer light. That one, I taped inside my closet door. Safe. Out of sight. But not forgotten. Back in the living room, I glanced at my phone again. Zania had posted something new. A dimly lit dinner photo. Captioned, "Even when someone disappears, family still stands together." And all I could think was, not this time. The comments came in right on cue. "Hope you're okay. You've always been the strong one. She's probably just going through something. Just pray for her." I didn't cry. I took screenshots. I labeled them, attached them to an email called Defamation Log SU1 and sent it straight to my lawyer. One sentence in the body. Nothing else. Then I shut off my phone, face down on the table, and just sat in the silence. It didn't scare me, not anymore. They wanted me to crumble quietly, to disappear without a sound. But instead, I said out loud, voice calm and steady in a way I hadn't felt in years, "This isn't a breakdown. It's a controlled detonation." And just like that, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Free. Not just from them, but free to decide what came next. No more straightening the tablecloth so it looked perfect in pictures. No more cropping myself out. No more staying quiet just to be polite. I wasn't fading. I was reclaiming. One picture, one folder, one piece of the truth at a time. Right before sunset, I pulled out of the parking lot. There was a little store-bought chocolate cake on the passenger seat, still in its plastic container, next to an old paperback copy of All the Pretty Horses. That was Dad's favorite. I found it the night before in a box labeled winter coats, and for some reason it felt right to bring it with me. The drive from Denver to Boulder isn't long, just under an hour, but it was long enough to feel like crossing some invisible line I couldn't go back from. The air had that crisp edge, the kind that shows up when summer's on its way out. Golden sunlight slipped through the cottonwoods, and the way their branches swayed felt like even they were finally exhaling. Like they'd been holding their breath too. I passed the restaurant, the one where I waited alone the week before. That awful Tuesday. But I didn't flinch. Didn't even glance at the valet stand. It didn't hold any meaning now. Some places lose their power when the people in them stop mattering. Edith's care home was quiet. Peaceful even. The woman at the front desk gave me a little nod and buzzed me in. Didn't ask who I was. Didn't question the lopsided chocolate cake with one candle taped to the lid. Maybe she just knew. Or maybe she'd stopped trying to figure out the stories that walk through those doors. Some visits don't need explaining. You carry them on your face, in your hands, in the way you move. I found Edith near the front window in the common room, bathed in the kind of golden light that makes everything look softer. She was flipping through one of those giant magazines made for aging eyes. More pictures than words. Something to hold space if not fill it. She looked up, squinted a little, then smiled in that familiar, wrinkly way that always made me feel 10 years old again. "Well," she said, folding the magazine into her lap. "Would you look at that? Happy late birthday to me." I grinned, holding up the cake like it was a trophy. She let out a soft laugh. "You're the only person I know who brings their own cake to their own party." "With one candle," I said. "And no guest list." "One guest is enough," she said gently. I placed the cake on the little table between us, pulled out the tiny lighter from my purse, mostly for incense or shoelaces, but apparently now for birthday moments too. I lit the candle. The flame danced a little in the fading light. We didn't sing. We didn't say wishes out loud. We just sat there and shared a slightly too sweet slice of cake and coffee that had been on the warmer way too long. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. More than enough. In that moment I felt more seen than I had in years. After a while, Edith leaned back and looked at me. "I never had a daughter," she said quietly. "But if I did, I think I'd want her to be like you. Stubborn. Not soft. The kind of girl who doesn't wait for someone to offer her a seat. She just drags one over and sits down." I looked at her like I was trying to memorize her. Every word she said felt like a keepsake, something I wanted to tuck away inside a book and carry with me forever. "If I had a mom like you," I whispered, "maybe I wouldn't have spent so many years learning how to survive in rooms where no one even noticed I came in." Neither of us cried. We didn't even blink too hard. Some kinds of grief don't explode. They just settle. Quietly. By the time I stepped outside, the sky had turned that soft lavender color you only see in Colorado when summer's ending and fall is sneaking in. The drive home felt lighter, like something had finally let go of me. My phone buzzed twice in the cup holder. I didn't even glance at it until I parked outside my building. Voicemail from Velma. I hit play. Her voice came through, raspy and trembling. "You've made your point. This family is falling apart because of you." I stopped it there. Didn't finish. Didn't need to. I hit delete mid-sentence. Whatever guilt she thought she was handing me, I wasn't picking it back up. Downstairs there was an envelope waiting in the mailbox. Legal-sized. I knew exactly what it was before I even opened it. Final. Signed. Stamped. Notarized. It was official. No more shared property. No more joint accounts. No more obligations passed down like secrets. Every last thread cut. Clean and irreversible. Upstairs in my apartment, I turned on the little lamp by the bookshelf. Lit the same candle I used with Edith. I don't know why. Maybe I just needed a little light to mark the moment. Then I sat down. Pulled out a blank note card. Wrote, "Happy birthday, Aylin. You were worth showing up for." I placed it beside the only photo I've ever kept, me and Dad, ankle deep in a lake somewhere upstate, holding fishing rods and smiling at something I can't even remember. We looked happy. I was barefoot. He had on that old cap he never let anyone touch. Then I opened my laptop. New folder. New document. Title, "What I Owe Myself." I didn't write a speech. Didn't try to be profound. I just typed. Slowly. Carefully. Not to prove anything. Just because I finally could. Because this story, it's mine now. And as the words filled the screen, I felt it. That quiet, surprising kind of freedom you don't even realize you've been starving for. Sunday came before the sun even did. No alarm. No buzzing. No chaos. Just silence. Not the kind that feels empty, the kind you earn. This time, the stillness didn't feel like loneliness. Felt like space. Mine. I walked across the floor barefoot, made some coffee and leaned against the counter. No urgent texts. No pings. No reminders telling me who to be. Just breath. And birdsong. And the start of a day I didn't need to survive, I could just live it. With my mug in hand, I stepped out onto the patio and slid the door all the way open. First time in months. The air rolled in soft and honest, not demanding anything from me. And I didn't flinch. I just stood there sipping coffee, watching the sky change colors. For once I wasn't waiting for anything. I wasn't rehearsing my defense. I wasn't begging to belong. I wasn't preparing for battle. I was just being. My phone buzzed again. I didn't rush. I rinsed my mug, dried my hands, and finally checked it. Voicemail from Curtis. I hesitated, then pressed play. No greeting. No warmth. Just his voice, sharp and tired. Mom's freaking out. The mortgage is overdue again. The bank's calling. You knew this would happen when you pulled out. No responsibility. No reflection. Just blame like always. But this time? No anger. No sting. I didn't even sigh. I forwarded it to my lawyer. Subject line: do not engage. Another ping. The family group chat lit up, first time in over a week. Velma, we didn't raise you to be cold. Zania, you're still family, but family doesn't walk away. I stared at the screen. They didn't raise me to be cold. They raised me to be quiet. To bend. To absorb. To keep showing up even when I wasn't welcome. This wasn't abandonment. It was self-preservation. For the first time, I wasn't cutting ties out of anger. I was choosing peace over performance. I put the phone down and walked to the bedroom. My closet door was already half open. Still taped to the inside. That old photo of Dad and me. Slightly wrinkled. Corners curled. He was laughing, hand on my shoulder. For years, I thought that picture proved I'd been loved once. Now it reminded me of who I was when no one was watching. I grabbed a sticky note. Wrote, "You didn't raise me to break. You taught me how to hold." I pressed it beside the photo. Smoothed the edges. Then I went back to my desk, opened the same file from before, What I Owe Myself. Chapter 1, and let the quiet speak first. Then I typed. Lesson 1. You're allowed to leave the table when love is no longer being served. I smiled. Hit save. Leaned back. Opened a new tab and searched for flights. Not to disappear. To arrive fresh. To land somewhere I don't have to carry the weight of who I used to be. No dramatic exit. No social media post. No final goodbye. Just a quiet decision. A booked seat. A tomorrow that belongs only to me. That's the freedom I've been chasing all along. Not the house. Not the approval. Not the family drama. Just this. The soft click of a door opening in the morning. The calm of a coffee cup without dread. The strength to read a cruel message and choose silence. The courage to say, this isn't where I stay anymore. I didn't feel lonely. I felt whole. And wherever I'm headed next, I'm not bringing their silence with me, only my voice. And that's enough. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness. It's wisdom. I spent years trying to squeeze into a life that was never made for me. But when I finally stood up, I realized I had everything I needed to build my own table. If you've ever felt like a background character in your own life, I need you to hear this. Your worth doesn't depend on who claps for you. It begins the moment you decide to clap for yourself. So now tell me, have you ever had to let go of people you once called family just to finally find peace? Drop your story in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from. And if this message touched something in you, type a 1 in the chat or tell me why it didn't. Every voice is welcome here. And if you believe in healing, in truth, in the kind of strength that grows quietly, subscribe. There's more where this came from.